everyone. Today we're doing a long-term review of the Intend Infinity Enduro. I've had this fork for roughly around a year now. First I had it on my specialized Kenevo SL, and then I moved it over to the new Cruz Bullit. Before the Infinity, I was on a highly tuned Mezzer fork with burnished bushings, Shockcraft tune, all this other stuff, and I have spent a bit of time on kind of the modern Enduro forks like the Zeb and the 38. This video is going to get pretty nerdy, so stick around if you're into it, but if you want like the TLDR, the fork's pretty awesome. It's hard to say if it's worth the price. I think that's a personal decision, but at a high level, the fork performs beautifully. The chassis is honestly the highlight of the fork, and it has three main things going for it. One, just the fact that it's upside down. It just puts the bushings in a better place and leads to reduced friction. Combine that with the fact that this is a dual crown fork, which means the bushings can go even higher as seen on the image. And then third, Intend's build quality is pretty insane. It's just a beautiful fork. So long story short, this fork has the least amount of friction that I have felt in any fork ever, especially under load. It's such a large impact that at first you kind of have to get used to it, and it did kind of mess with my tuning philosophy. On like a regular fork, when you're on the brakes or when you're hitting something hard, there's actually quite a bit of friction just from the bushings. You can call it bushing bind, and even when the fork is freshly serviced and feeling pretty smooth, the Intend basically takes it to a whole nother level, and there's literally zero friction. So I'll get into this a little bit on the damper and air spring side, because I actually found myself needing more support because the friction was kind of giving me some level of support on a traditional fork, and now there's no friction. So it's crazy. The second thing to touch on the chassis is it is upside down, so there's that kind of flexiness on turning that we've kind of heard about. I think it's mostly a benefit for like 98% of riding. If you're optimizing for like a pump track or really high speed, well supported grippy berms, then maybe there's too much flex. I'm around 170 pounds for reference, but I would say maybe go with a traditional fork for that kind of stuff. But for everything else, for enduro riding, especially for rough riding, it's actually only a benefit in my experience versus a downside. Having said that, like, it is interesting to think about the total stiffness of the bike and of the steering. So you can get a lot of steering stiffness in the wheel. In my case, I actually was previously experimenting with the very flexy wheel. I had a 400 gram cross-country 29er aluminum rim that flexed quite a bit, and it felt pretty good with the traditional fork like the Mezzer and the 38. But combined with the Intend, I actually found that it was a little bit too much. So because of that, I went to a We Are One carbon wheel set, and I actually really like that combination. I got a little more stiffness from the wheel by going to a carbon wheel, a little more flex from the upside down fork, and it put me like literally right where I need to be, and it feels awesome. It feels awesome. I can hit most things as hard as I want. Oh, and the last thing about the chassis that people worry about as far as it being a dual crown fork is the steering angle limitation. It hasn't bothered me, and I'm using it on an e-bike, which gives even less steering angle. I think if I had a really fat down tube e-bike, maybe it'll get to the point where it gets annoying, but honestly, it hasn't been a problem. It's not good for parking lots, not good for track stands, so don't do that. If you want to do that, get a regular fork, but besides that, I wouldn't worry about it too much. Okay, let's move on to the air spring. I actually struggled with this one a little bit. So coming off of a Manitou Mezzer that had the IRT system, which is similar to the Olin's ramp-up chamber and what EXT is doing as well, having that second positive air chamber, I love how it felt on the Mezzer. So yeah, I ended up trying the Linearizer, thinking that I would like it since I like the IRT and it's a very similar system. The biggest thing, it was just too progressive. Yeah, and basically this air spring, it has a super large negative chamber, which means it's super supple off the top. And basically, as soon as I put in enough pressure to get support off of the top that I needed, it was getting way too progressive when combined with the Linearizer. Even with no air in the Linearizer, I actually cut the shaft that the Linearizer is on so that it would bottom out deeper and give me more positive volume. But even that, it was just too much. And either I dropped the main chamber, which then made the top of the fork way too soft, and I was just flying through the travel and then hitting support, or I increased the pressure to get the support I want off of the top and the middle, but then I would have way too much progression, and it was a progression that felt pretty rampy, just like running into a wall of progression. So what I ended up doing is taking that out, and I actually added the largest volume cap. They have a cap that actually increases the positive volume, and I ended up finding a setting that I really like. The only other interesting thing is that right now I'm running 135 PSI for like a little over 170 rider weight at around 177 millimeters of travel. And Intend actually recommend 105 PSI. So yeah, I'm running 135 compared to 105. So I'm running a lot more. And even at that pressure, I'm getting insane amount of sensitivity off of the top. The middle feels very, very supportive now, and I can bottom it out. Although I think ideally I would actually like even more positive chamber, a little bit less progression, but it's a great air spring. It feels very coil-like thanks to the massive volume. And I would just say, don't be afraid of cranking up that PSI. To summarize, the Intend air spring is awesome. I recommend trying the increased volume and cranking up the PSI so that you actually have support off of the top and the middle, which is good for aggressive riding, which is what I do. I think if you're looking to more save your hands over a long full day ride, maybe having a little bit more progression and have it a little bit softer off the top might work for you. Okay, so let's talk about the damper and the damper tune. The way I could summarize it is that it's a solid damper. It does what it needs to do. It can generate damping without it getting harsh, but I did not like the stock optimized tune. I can see what they were going for. I can see the tune being absolutely fantastic if you want to save your hands and your body for a really long ride. But my riding is a little bit more winch and plummet, and I want the most support possible versus compliance, if that makes any sense. So basically I'm looking for a damper that will stay high in the travel, and I also have a preference for a sticky rebound tune, which we'll talk about in a bit. So thankfully, Intend makes it super easy to get to the compression shim stack. The rebound is a little bit harder to get to, but the compression one is super easy to play with. And up on the screen, you can see the kind of the stock optimized compression shim stack and what I went to. And long story short, you know, I went to something that gives me more low speed compression. I recently saw on a forum that they came out with a new low speed compression needle, because it sounds like the current one I have, it doesn't actually close fully. Even at fully closed, there's still some low speed bleed. And the new one, you can like fully close it off. So I'm actually interested in trying that, because I might be able to go to a lighter tune if I can get a little bit more low speed support. Yeah, so I want to talk a bit about rebound and kind of my philosophy on what I like and what I think they were going to, but I was pretty surprised here. The stock rebound tune is super stiff. And it's another way of saying like really progressive. Let's talk about rebound tuning philosophy. I made this beautiful drawing that basically compares what I felt the stock tune was versus what I like and prefer. And basically the way I see it is when you're adjusting the low speed rebound adjuster on the outside, what you're really doing is trying to get to the mid-speed rebound that you like. And you can get to the same mid-speed rebound point with different curves to get to that mid-speed rebound. And if the rebound is really progressive like it is stock, then you have to run the low-speed rebound really open or really fast to get to that same mid-speed rebound, compared to a shim stack that's lighter, which lets you run the low-speed rebound adjuster more closed or more aggressive, but because it's lighter, you still get that same mid-speed rebound point. So a progressive shim stack, like on the stock tune, it kind of forces you to run a poppy setup where you have to run the rebound adjuster really open to get the rebound to move fast enough. Where I prefer what I would call a sticky or dead feeling rebound with a lot of control, or what I feel like is control, where I can run the low speed rebound a lot more closed. And then the shim stack is light enough that it still doesn't pack up. You still get the same mid-speed rebound. And then still some progression at the end so that it doesn't kick at bottom out. So this process was trial and error. I did try a few different compression and rebound tunes, which kind of leads to a suggestion for Intend. Like, I feel like they're already so nerdy and engineering focused that I wish they would provide some dyno plots of different rebound stacks. So for folks where the optimized tune isn't really hitting their preference, they can kind of make an educated shim stack change. Okay, so we talked about the chassis, the air spring, the damper, and the tuning that I did to kind of get to where I liked it. So what's the verdict? The fork's a monster. It's just super smooth yet supportive at the same time. So I feel like I'm getting to get the best of both worlds. And the chassis is insanely smooth. Like you hit kind of any stair step type hit and you barely feel it. Kind of feels like the tire is flat, and yet the air spring is super supportive in the mid stroke, and I'm getting support from the damper. So I have something to push against in corners, G outs, and jumps. So it just feels super composed. I really like it, and now I'm itching to get one for, you know, my other bike that currently has a Mezzer on it. Even though the Mezzer is an awesome fork, there's just some magic in the chassis. I think stock, the fork's awesome for most riders, especially maybe less aggressive riders. How smooth and supple it is literally insane. And then with some tuning, the fork's freaking amazing for aggressive riding as well. The other thing to think about is I feel like dual crown forks are going to be the future. They have so many benefits, especially in the upside down format. This thing weighs about the same as a Fox 38, but it's just so much better, in my opinion. I haven't tried the new Fox damper. That maybe might change my opinion on it, but the Fox 38 with the Grip 2 damper on it was always a game of compromises for me, and I was never, you know, truly happy with it. So yeah, that's my deep dive into the Intend Infinity Enduro. Leave a like if this video was helpful. Tell me about your experiences with these Intend upside down forks or any other upside down forks. And yeah, let me know if there's any questions down in the comments. Happy to help you nerd out on these cool forks. Peace.